The Newsday continues here on One News Now Business. I'm Diego Castro. Here are the biggest stories on the economic and corporate fronts. The Bangko Sentral paused its aggressive monetary policy tightening for the first time since May 2022. Central Bank Governor Felipe Medalla said the BSP deemed it prudent to keep the country's benchmark interest rate at 6.25% at its policy meeting on Thursday. Interest rates on the overnight deposit and lending facilities were also maintained at 5.75% and 6.75% respectively. Since it began its tightening cycle last year, the BSP has raised borrowing costs by a total of 425 basis points. However, the BSP has now signaled that the policy rate will remain unchanged at its next 2 to 3 meetings as inflation continues to ease. This comes after the Philippine Statistics Authority reported that the Consumer Price Index had slowed over the last 3 months to settle at 6.6% in April. However, the BSP says this will still depend on the U.S. Fed's move, as well as the movement of the country's inflation rate.
It's quite unlikely that we will cut in the next, or even the next to the next policy meeting. Okay, if for instance the likely scenario is the U.S. is going to cut in September or October, clearly we will not be too far ahead of that. Of course, the assumption there is that the current inflation forecasts are not revised upwards.
The central bank also lowered its average inflation forecast for 2023 to 5.5%. This from its initial 6% projection in March. However, the latest forecast is still beyond the BSP's 2 to 4% target range for the entire year. BSP Governor Medalla also hinted at a reduction in the reserve requirement ratio of banks as early as June. To talk more about this, we have on the show China Bank Chief Economist Domini Velasquez. Good morning, Ma'am Domini, and thank you very much for joining us this morning on our show.
Hello, good morning, Diego. Thank you for inviting me also.
Yes, first off, ma'am, was this rate pause expected?
I guess largely yes. If you look at different surveys, Business World has one, Bloomberg also has one. Most analysts think that there will be a pause already yesterday. Since the 425 basis points you mentioned, it's already a lot, and we haven't really felt the full effects of that monetary tightening from last year.
And what should then be the Bangko Sentral's direction after this decision to hold rates? Should it continue with a pause? Should it make adjustments in its next meetings?
I think what we're seeing right now, this pause is necessary. You're pretty sure inflation is going to go down. The BSP revised its revised its forecast lower. Ours is at 5.8%. So you have that. You also have a moderating GDP, so you need the support of monetary policy eventually. You haven't actually felt that full monetary tightening yet. Usually when you tighten monetary policy, the effects is in 12 months. You'll feel the lag effects after 12 months. So you haven't felt that yet. So generally, we think this pause is necessary. We think the BSP has room to cut rates once inflation goes back to its 2 to 4% target, probably in Q4.
Okay, well, prior to this pause, the BSP hiked, I think, rates in its previous 9 meetings. Can we say that these hikes have already had an effect on the economy? Have the hikes been a big factor, at least in easing of inflation?
I think, yes, it did have effects already. We've seen bank lending slow down a little bit in the past few months. As I mentioned, the full effect, you'll really see it in 12 months' time. So the reason why we think it should be the BSP, we agree with the BSP to pause already, is that we'll still feel that effect going forward. On inflation, we think it has done its job in curtailing demand pull inflation, in ensuring that inflationary expectations are well anchored. But of course, there are supply side issues that we're seeing. So that one can be addressed by non-monetary actions instead of monetary tightening.
Okay, and how about your inflation forecast for the rest of the year after the CPI eased further to 6.6%, I think, in April?
Yes, for us, we're retaining our 5.8%. I guess more importantly is the trajectory. We think inflation is going to go down, so we're going to continue posting lower and lower inflation rates until we get to maybe to November, where our estimate is around 3% inflation, but going to go down largely because you have base effects from last year. So inflation rate is a growth rate, right? So since you have increasing prices last year, you'll see the growth rate slower. But of course, you have that lower commodity prices this year also.
Yes.
And I think some supply shortages have been addressed, bringing down food prices.
Yes, ma'am. And the BSP forecasts inflation to fall within its target of 2 to 4% by September. Is this achievable? Are you optimistic as the BSP?
Yes, actually, our forecast is aligned. Our current forecast is it's going to fall between the 2 and 4% target by November. If food prices fall earlier, even October.
Okay, and how about what's your growth forecast for this year after the first quarter GDP print came in at about 6.4%, which was the slowest growth in 2 years? Can the Philippines hit the Bangko Central's growth target of 6 to 7% this year?
For us, 6 to 7% of the DBCC, the economic managers, likely achievable at the 6% range, the 6% level, but our current forecast is a little bit below. This
Okay.
6.4% in Q1, it still includes some of that lagged effects of opening up of the economy. If you remember, so February last year, we opened up to tourist arrivals. We went back full on-site work around April. So you still have that kind of post-pandemic momentum. But Q2, Q3, Q4, you won't have that anymore. We were fully open last year, so you don't have that kind of base effect you're gonna bank on. So we think we're going to post around 5.5% growth in the next 3 quarters, bringing full year growth to maybe around 5.8, 5.7%.
Okay, and BSP has also hinted at cutting the 12% reserve requirement ratio of banks as early as June. Should the BSP proceed at trimming the RRR?
Yes, this is actually very much welcome for us. Even Secretary Jokno was previously the governor before already mentioned bringing down reserve requirements to single digit. So it does free up some money. I think the way Governor Medalla was explaining it yesterday was that it's not being used as a monetary policy tool, but actually more of a operational calibration. So it shouldn't be inflationary. It should actually support this lapse of the relief for MSMEs.
If the BSP definitely decides on the RRR, what do you think is the safe or acceptable RRR?
I think there was clear signal already of 200 basis points cut, so from 12% to 10%. We're also banking on in the future maybe bringing this down to single-digit levels so that we're aligned with ASEAN neighbors.
Thank you very much, Ma'am Dominique Velasquez, Chief Economist of China Bank, for joining us today on our program.
Thank you.
We'll be back with more stories after the break. Keep it here on One News. You're still watching One News Now. I'm Diego Castro. The Energy Department expedites the processing of permits and requirements for offshore wind or OSW energy projects. Secretary Rafael Lotilla signed the implementing rules and regulations for Executive Order 21 on OSW development. Under the IRR, the agency will adopt a whole-of-government approach for the expeditious realization of OSW projects. The Interior Department will mandate a uniform set of requirements, procedures, permits, and fees for local governments. All permitting agencies, meanwhile, should submit a complete list of permits and clearances to the DOE by June 18. The DOE added that it will integrate the identified processes to its energy virtual one-stop shop to harmonize the process. The Civil Aeronautics Board marks down passenger fuel surcharges for June. The decision means that fuel surcharges next month will be at Level 4, marking the third consecutive months of deduction. Under Level 4, fuel surcharge for domestic flights range from 117 to 342 pesos and 385 to 2,800 pesos for international flights. Airlines impose surcharges on passengers to recoup costs since fuel prices are volatile. And those are the top business stories of the hour. I'm Diego Castro. Join us again at 2 p.m. We are One News, all sides, all the time.